My brother thought it was funny to steal my identity for a loan. Mom sided with him, mocking me at dinner. I stayed silent, then made one phone call. By morning, the FBI arrived at their doorstep. The thing about being underestimated your entire life is that you learn to stay quiet. You learn to observe. You learn that sometimes the most powerful move is simply watching people reveal exactly who they are. I'm Lauren Hayes, 29 years old, and I've been the family disappointment for as long as I can remember. While my brother Patrick climbed the corporate ladder at his investment firm, landing promotions, and posting about his executive lifestyle on social media, I supposedly struggled through various entry-level government jobs that my family barely understood and certainly didn't respect. Still pushing papers at that boring office. Dad would ask at family gatherings, barely hiding his disappointment. Lauren works for some federal agency. Mom would explain to relatives with an apologetic shrug. Something with banking regulations. We don't really understand it. Patrick, 3 years older, never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of the gap between us. I just closed a $4.2 million deal, he'd announce at Sunday dinners. Meanwhile, Lauren is probably filing paperwork for her $58,000 government salary. The family would laugh. I'd smile and change the subject. What they didn't know, what I couldn't tell them due to the nature of my work, was that I was a senior special agent with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, a division of the U.S. Treasury Department. My boring government job involved investigating complex financial fraud, money laundering operations, and identity theft rings that moved hundreds of millions of dollars. My security clearance was higher than most people knew existed. My cases had taken down international criminal organizations. My testimony had sent dozens of fraudsters to federal prison. But I drove a modest Toyota, lived in a small apartment in Alexandria, and wore suits from Nordstrom Rack. The work required discretion. High-profile wealth attracted attention, and attention compromised investigations. So I let my family think I was boring, unsuccessful Lauren who couldn't compete with brilliant Patrick. It had been manageable until about 6 months ago, when Patrick's behavior started changing. He'd always been competitive, but there was a new edge to his cruelty. An urgency. Mom, don't lend Lauren any money, he'd warned loudly at Easter dinner. She's terrible with finances. Always has been. Remember when you couldn't even get approved for that credit card? He'd laughed at my nephew's birthday party. Some of us are just better with money. I'd noticed other things too. Patrick had bought a new luxury sedan, a BMW 750i, I noted, around $95,000, appearing regularly on his Instagram alongside designer watches. He'd mentioned expanding his investment portfolio and diversifying his assets. For someone who'd complained about student loans just a year ago, he seemed to have found a significant cash infusion. But I'd been deep in a major investigation, a cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme affecting thousands of victims, and didn't have the mental bandwidth to analyze my brother's finances. I figured he'd gotten a promotion or a bonus. I should have paid closer attention. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was in a briefing about a multi-state identity theft ring we'd been tracking for 8 months. Mom. Family dinner this Sunday. Your father has an announcement. Be there. I almost cancelled. Sundays were my only day off, and spending them enduring Patrick's commentary on my failed career wasn't exactly relaxing. But Dad's announcements were usually significant. Retirements, health updates, major family decisions. I texted back, I'll be there. Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Chevy Chase was the same elaborate production it had always been. Mom's dining room table seated 12, and she used every inch of it. The good china, the crystal glasses, the linen napkins that required special laundering. Patrick arrived in his new BMW, wearing what looked like a Tom Ford blazer. He hugged Mom and immediately started talking about his latest business victory. The board approved my proposal, he announced, pouring himself wine. I'm basically running the entire Mid-Atlantic operations now. That's wonderful, honey, Mom beamed. Lauren, did you hear? Your brother is running the entire Mid-Atlantic. Congratulations, I said, taking my usual seat at the far end of the table. Dad cleared his throat. Before we eat, I want to share some news. Your mother and I have decided to update our estate plan. Patrick's eyes sharpened with interest. We are getting older, Dad continued, and we want to make sure everything is properly organized. We've been working with our attorney to restructure our assets, set up trusts, ensure everything is fair. Fair is important, Patrick said quickly, though obviously contributions should be considered. Some of us have been more successful than others. The comment hung in the air. I said nothing. We are splitting everything equally, Mom said firmly. But there are some financial considerations we need to discuss: medical expenses, long-term care insurance, that sort of thing. Dinner proceeded with its usual dynamics. Patrick dominated the conversation with stories about his company, his deals, his executive decisions. My aunt asked polite questions. My uncle made impressed sounds. I ate quietly, responded when spoken to, and thought about the cryptocurrency case. We were close to making arrests. Then, as Mom was serving dessert, her famous apple pie, Patrick's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled, and looked directly at me. Actually, he said, voice dripping with satisfaction, speaking of financial success and responsibility, I have something to share. The table went quiet. Lauren, he continued, I want to thank you for being such an inspiration. I looked up. His smile was predatory. You inspired me to take control of my finances, to make bold moves, to not let anything hold me back. He paused dramatically. So I used your identity to secure a $92,000 personal loan. The approval came through last month. The words didn't immediately register. I stared at him. What? I said quietly. A $92,000 loan, he repeated, clearly enjoying himself. In your name. Your credit was actually better than I expected. All those years of living like a boring government employee paid off. The bank approved it immediately. Patrick, Dad said slowly, what are you talking about? Oh, don't worry, he waved dismissively. I'm making the payments. Well, most of them. Lauren won't even notice. It's not like she checks her credit reports. He laughed. She probably doesn't even know how. My aunt gasped. My uncle looked confused. You committed identity theft, I said, my voice perfectly calm. You fraudulently obtained a loan using my personal information. Identity theft. Patrick laughed harder. It's not theft when it's family. I needed the capital for an investment opportunity, and your credit was just sitting there unused. I'm actually doing you a favor, building your credit history. That's illegal, I said. What are you going to do about it? He leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. Report your own brother? Take me to court? You can't even afford a lawyer on your government salary. Mom laughed nervously. Lauren can't afford legal fees. Patrick, honey, maybe you should have asked first. Asked? Patrick interrupted. Why? She would have said no, and the opportunity would have passed. This is what successful people do, Lauren. We make bold moves. We don't wait for permission. You forged my signature, I said, still calm. You falsified loan documents. You committed federal banking fraud. Federal banking fraud. Patrick mocked. Listen to you with your big government words. This is a family matter. And frankly, I'm contributing more to this family's success than you ever have. Consider it a family loan that I took the initiative to arrange. Without her consent, my uncle said quietly, Patrick, it's smart, he cut him off. It's resourceful. It's what winners do. He looked at me. What are you going to do about it, Lauren? Cry to Mom and Dad? They can't help you. File a police report? You'd have to prove I did it, and I was very careful. He pulled out his phone and showed the table a screenshot. See? The loan is in Lauren's name, but the funds went to my investment account, completely traceable to legitimate business purposes. I even have documents showing Lauren agreed to co-sign. He smiled. Documents with a signature that matches hers perfectly. You forged government documents, I said quietly. I created opportunity, he corrected. Something you've never understood. You spent your whole life playing it safe, following rules, staying small. I take risks. I make things happen. And yes, sometimes that means being creative with resources. Dad was pale. Patrick, if you needed money. I didn't need charity, he snapped. I needed capital, and Lauren's credit was available. It's not like she was using it for anything important. He turned to me. When was the last time you even checked your credit score? Do you even know how to access your credit report? The truth was, I checked my credit reports weekly. Part of my job involved understanding how identity thieves operated, which meant monitoring my own information obsessively. I'd seen the inquiry from Patrick's bank 3 weeks ago. I'd seen the loan approval. I'd watched the entire fraud unfold in real time. And I'd been building a case. What can you do about it? Patrick pressed. Seriously, Lauren, you can't afford a lawyer. You can't prove anything. And even if you could, are you really going to send your own brother to court over a loan he's making payments on? Some of the payments, I corrected quietly. He blinked. What? You said you're making most of the payments, which means you've already missed some. The bank has sent 3 late payment notices to my address. I have them all. Her confidence flickered. You're bluffing. The first missed payment was 6 weeks ago. The second was 3 weeks ago. The third arrived yesterday. I kept my voice level. Each missed payment damages my credit score. Each one creates a paper trail of fraud. It's not fraud, he insisted, but uncertainty crept into his voice. What can I do about it? I repeated his question. That's interesting phrasing. I pulled out my phone. The table watched as I typed a brief message. Initiate fraud investigation. Target confirmed. Location, 7642 Elmwood Drive, Chevy Chase, Maryland. Multiple witnesses present. Subject has confessed to federal banking fraud, identity theft, and document forgery. I hit send. Who are you texting? Patrick demanded. My team, I said simply. Your team. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Your boring office colleagues? What are they going to do? File a complaint? Not exactly, I said. My phone buzzed. Response from Deputy Director Catherine Walsh. Units dispatching. ETA 9 minutes. Recording authorization confirmed. Lauren, Mom said nervously. What's going on? I need to read you your rights, Patrick, I said calmly. He stared at me. My rights? You have the right to remain silent, I began. Stop it, he snapped. This isn't funny. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Lauren, stop playing games. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. I don't need a damn attorney. Patrick shouted. You're not a cop. You're right, I said. I'm not a police officer. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my credentials. Federal badge on one side, identification on the other. I'm Senior Special Agent Lauren Hayes, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, U.S. Treasury Department. I specialize in banking fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes investigations. The room went completely silent. Patrick's face drained of color. That's not. You work a desk job. I investigate complex financial fraud, I continued. My current caseload includes a multi-state identity theft ring, a cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme, and as of 3 weeks ago, a personal case involving my own stolen identity. Dad stood up slowly. Lauren, you're a federal agent. For 6 years, I confirmed. I couldn't tell you due to the sensitive nature of my investigations. My position requires discretion. But you said, we thought, Mom stammered. You thought I was a low-level government clerk, I finished. Which was safer for everyone. High-profile wealth attracts attention. Attention compromises investigations. So I lived modestly and let you believe I was unsuccessful. Patrick was shaking. You can't arrest me. I'm your brother. That's exactly why I can arrest you, I said. You committed federal crimes. You stole my identity. You defrauded a federally insured banking institution. You forged documents. And you did it all while knowing I work for the government, which adds additional charges. I didn't know you were. You knew I worked for a federal agency, I interrupted. You used that information to assume I was powerless. You assumed wrong. Outside, I heard vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles. Lauren, please, Patrick's voice cracked. I'll pay it back. I'll cancel the loan. We can fix this. You've made 3 late payments, I said. The bank has already reported it to credit bureaus. The damage is done. And more importantly, you committed federal crimes. That doesn't disappear because we are related. But I'm your brother. Which makes it worse, I said quietly. You targeted a federal agent. You used family access to commit fraud. Those are aggravating factors, not excuses. The doorbell rang. Dad walked to the door in a daze and opened it. 6 FBI agents stood on the porch, led by Deputy Director Walsh herself. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a windbreaker with FBI in large yellow letters. Agent Hayes, she nodded to me. Subject present, seated at the table, I confirmed. He's been read his rights. He's made multiple incriminating statements in front of witnesses. Patrick stood up, panicking. This is insane. Lauren, tell them this is a mistake. Patrick James Hayes, Deputy Director Walsh said formally, you are under arrest for federal banking fraud, identity theft, document forgery, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent. I know my damn rights. Patrick screamed. Lauren, do something. I'm doing something, I said calmly. I'm prosecuting a federal case. 2 agents moved to handcuff Patrick. He struggled, screaming about family loyalty and betrayal and how I was ruining his life. Agent Hayes, Walsh said quietly, will need statements from everyone present. Your family witnessed the confession. Multiple confessions, I confirmed. He detailed the entire fraud, admitted to forging documents, and acknowledged missed payments. Mom was crying. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My uncle spoke up, his voice steady. I heard everything. He confessed to identity theft and fraud. He was bragging about it. Same, my aunt added. He seemed proud of what he'd done. Walsh nodded. We'll need those statements officially. And Agent Hayes, given the personal nature of this case, you'll need to recuse yourself from the investigation. Understood, I said. I've documented everything. The case file is ready for transfer. Patrick was still screaming as they led him outside. You're supposed to protect me. You're my sister. How can you do this to family? You did this to yourself, I said quietly. I just documented it. The FBI vehicles pulled away, Patrick visible in the back of one, still shouting. The neighbors had come outside. Someone was filming. Inside, my parents sat in stunned silence. Lauren, Mom finally said, how long have you been a federal agent? 6 years, I repeated. Since I was 23. I was recruited during college by the Treasury Department. They wanted someone with my financial analysis background and language skills. Language skills? Dad asked weakly. I speak Spanish, French, and Portuguese fluently, I said. Useful for international financial crimes. You knew I studied languages. You just didn't know why. We thought it was a hobby, Mom whispered. It was training, I corrected, for complex investigations involving international fraud networks. But you live in that small apartment, Dad said. You drive that old car. Part of my cover, I explained. Federal agents investigating financial crimes can't appear wealthy. It compromises our ability to work undercover, to blend in, to be underestimated. I paused. Being underestimated is actually a significant advantage in my work. Patrick said you couldn't afford a lawyer, Mom said. I have an entire legal department at my disposal, I said. The U.S. Attorney's Office handles my cases. I also have connections with the FBI, Secret Service, IRS criminal investigation, and Homeland Security investigations. I looked at my parents. I couldn't afford a lawyer because I don't need one. I work with the people who prosecute the lawyers. My uncle spoke carefully. Lauren, what happens now? Patrick will be processed at the FBI field office, I said. He'll be formally charged with multiple federal crimes. Given the dollar amount, $92,000, and the interstate nature of the fraud, he's looking at significant federal prison time. Prison. Mom gasped. Federal sentencing guidelines for identity theft and banking fraud are strict, I explained. He'll likely face 5 to 7 years minimum, possibly more given the aggravating factors. What aggravating factors? He targeted a federal agent. He used family access to commit the crime. He showed no remorse. In fact, he bragged about it. He attempted to justify criminal behavior. And he's already defaulted on the payments, which demonstrates intent to defraud. Dad put his head in his hands. Can you help him? No, I said simply. I can't interfere with a federal investigation, and honestly, I wouldn't. He committed serious crimes. He needs to face consequences. But he's your brother, Mom pleaded. Which makes it worse, I said again. He had family access to my personal information. He exploited that trust. He deliberately targeted me because he thought I was powerless. That's not a mistake. That's calculated predatory behavior. My phone buzzed. Text from Walsh. Subject lawyered up. Requesting personal effects search. Need family consent or warrant. I looked at my parents. The FBI wants to search Patrick's room here. They can get a warrant, or you can consent. What are they looking for? Dad asked. Evidence of other frauds, I said. If he did this to me, he's probably done it to others. They'll be looking for documents, account statements, other people's personal information. Mom nodded slowly. Search it. 20 minutes later, 2 FBI agents were photographing Patrick's childhood bedroom, now his guest room when he visited. They found a locked file box in his closet. Agent Hayes, one of them called, "You need to see this." Inside the box were credit card statements in multiple names, applications for loans, copies of driver's licenses and social security cards. That's Dad's information, I said quietly, pointing to one set. And Mom's. And Uncle Greg's. My uncle went pale. He stole my identity too. The agent bagged everything carefully. We'll need to notify these victims and open additional investigations. How many people? Dad asked weakly. At least 7 from what we are seeing here, the agent said. Could be more. Mom was crying harder now. Our own son. Your son is a serial identity thief, I said gently. He's been running a fraud operation targeting his own family. He chose me first because he thought I couldn't fight back. But his job, Dad said, his company, his success. Probably bought with stolen money, I said. They'll audit his finances. If he's been living beyond his means, they'll trace every dollar. My phone rang. Walsh. Agent Hayes. Subject is requesting to speak with you. Says he wants to make a deal. No deals, I said immediately. He confessed to federal crimes in front of witnesses. He showed no remorse. He targeted a federal agent and multiple family members. There's nothing to negotiate. Understood. Her attorney is pushing back, but we have solid evidence. The loan documents alone prove forgery. Combined with his recorded confession and the evidence from his residence, this is airtight. Timeline for charges. U.S. Attorney wants to move fast. Formal indictment by Wednesday. Arraignment by Friday. Given the evidence, they're not offering bail. He's a serial fraudster with access to sophisticated financial knowledge. Flight risk. I hung up and looked at my parents. Patrick will be formally charged on Wednesday. The U.S. Attorney's Office is handling the prosecution. He won't get bail. No bail? Mom whispered. Federal Detention Center, I corrected. And yes. He's committed multiple federal crimes and has access to financial resources. They can't risk him fleeing. Dad stood slowly. Lauren, I don't understand. Why did you wait? You said you knew 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you stop him immediately? I needed evidence, I said. Identity theft cases require proof of intent. I had to demonstrate that he knowingly committed fraud, that he understood it was illegal, and that he planned to continue the crime. You were investigating your own brother, he said. I was doing my job, I corrected. When I saw the loan inquiry, I opened a case file. I documented everything. I waited for him to act, to miss payments, to make incriminating statements, to demonstrate criminal intent. You let him keep stealing, Uncle Greg said quietly. I let him finish building his own case, I said. Every missed payment, every forged document, every dollar spent added to the charges. If I'd stopped him immediately, he could have claimed it was a mistake, a miscommunication. By waiting, I let him prove it was deliberate, ongoing fraud. That's cold, my aunt said. That's prosecution, I replied. Emotions don't convict criminals. Evidence does. My phone buzzed with another message. This one from the forensic accounting team. Initial audit shows $385,000 in fraudulent loans and credit cards across 7 victims. Subject's legitimate income, $102,000 annually. Lifestyle expenses, $195,000 plus. Gap funded entirely by fraud. I showed my parents the message. He's been living a complete lie, Mom said softly. The luxury car, the designer clothes, the expensive dinners, all stolen, all borrowed against other people's identities, I confirmed. He built an entire lifestyle on fraud. How long? Dad asked. We'll know more after the full investigation, but probably 2 to 3 years, I said. That's when his spending patterns changed dramatically. And we never noticed, Mom said. He was careful, I said. He targeted family members he thought wouldn't check their credit reports regularly. He kept the loan amounts below thresholds that would trigger automatic investigations. He made enough payments to avoid immediate default. It was sophisticated fraud. But he got caught, Uncle Greg said. Because he got greedy, I said, and because he targeted someone who actually understood financial crimes. 3 days later, Patrick Hayes was formally indicted on 16 counts of federal fraud, identity theft, and related crimes. The U.S. Attorney requested no bail, citing him as a sophisticated financial criminal with means and motive to flee. The judge agreed. Patrick would remain in federal detention until trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Patrick's own confessions, caught on my phone's voice recorder with proper authorization, the forged documents, the stolen identities, the spending patterns that proved deliberate, ongoing fraud. He was convicted on all counts. Sentencing came 3 months later. Patrick James Hayes, the judge said, looking stern, you have been convicted of serious federal crimes. You targeted your own family members, people who trusted you, and exploited that trust for financial gain. You showed no remorse. In fact, you bragged about your crimes. You believed you were above consequences. Patrick stood wearing an orange jumpsuit, his expensive haircut grown out and unkempt. You were wrong, the judge continued. This court sentences you to 9 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You will also pay restitution totaling $385,000 to your victims, and all assets purchased with fraudulent funds will be seized and liquidated. Mom sobbed in the gallery. Dad sat stone-faced. I sat in the back, watching justice unfold exactly as it should. 9 years. Patrick would be 40 when he was released. His career destroyed, his reputation ruined, his freedom gone. All because he thought his boring, unsuccessful sister couldn't fight back. As I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed. Message from Deputy Director Walsh. Excellent work on the Hayes case. Your documentation was flawless. The U.S. attorney was impressed. This will reflect well in your performance review. I texted back, just doing my job. Because that's what it was. Not revenge, not family drama. Just a federal agent investigating financial crimes and protecting victims. Even when the criminal was my brother. Especially when the criminal was my brother.